Welcome to another flipped video lesson with me, Mr. Volkman. We are continuing our close-up view of the 13 colonies. Today, we'll be looking at Pennsylvania and Maryland. As always, here's is a suggestion of a type of outline you can take for notes. Again, you do not need to use this particular type of web. However, I do strongly encourage you to please make sure when you do take your notes that you take notes on the government, religion, reasons for leaving, economics, geography, and climate for whatever colony that I am talking about. And again, you can fill in these spaces with words, with pictures, bullet points, full sentences. It is entirely up to you. A final reminder before we begin. This is an academic video, not entertainment. So please make sure you are in an area where you can concentrate and listen. Don't be afraid to pause the video and to rewind it if you feel like there's something that you missed. Come along with me now as we begin our journey into the colonies. Let's start off talking about the colony of Pennsylvania, which was in the Middle Colonies region. We had the New England colonies at top, the Southern colonies on the bottom, and right in the middle were the Middle colonies. First off, the climate. The climate for Pennsylvania was one where they had very cold winters. However, after the cold winters, they had hot and humid summers. So already we're starting to see, as we get more south in the 13 colonies, that the summers are warming up. Looking at the geography, they had rolling hills, trees, fertile soil, coastal plains, which is somewhat different than what we have in Washington State. When we get to our coast, we see a lot of rocks and cliffs, and not the nicest beaches. However, in Pennsylvania, with the coastal plain, what you saw was more flat land gradually to the coast. So it's very different than what we have here. They had plateaus, mountains. However, though, they had very suitable land for farming. They were known as the breadbasket of the colonies. And if we take a look at these pictures, here we can see examples of what I just described. I'm going to try to make this picture a little bit bigger so you can get a better idea of where the geography was and what it was like. So I want you to pause the video for a moment and take a closer look. I'm sorry that it's fuzzy. All right, moving on. Talking still about the colony of Pennsylvania. Let's look at the economy. So in Pennsylvania, they had farming, crop farming, dairy farming. There are merchants, tradesmen. Remember, last video we talked about tradesmen being men or women, but mainly men, who were focused on one type of occupation, such as a blacksmith or someone who created something with wood. Lumber was an industry, as always, because there were a lot of trees in the 13 colonies, because not a lot of people had lived there, at least people who were going to cut down the trees. And as always, shipbuilding, because, well, you're right on the coast, you have lumber, and a great place to build your boats. We're coming to a new segment that I want to call Question with Mr. Mint. So without further ado, Mr. Mint has a question.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's me, Mr. Mint. After much deliberating with Mr. Volkman, I got my own segment, albeit a short one. Sorry. My question is this. What are some similarities and differences that you see between this colony of Pennsylvania and the colony of New York, which was also a middle colony? Please pause the video and just jot down a few ideas. Now I must go. Woo!
And I'm back. Hopefully you jotted down some ideas. Don't want to make Mr. Mint unhappy. It's time to now talk about the reasons why people left England to come to the colony of Pennsylvania. William Penn, the founder of Pennsylvania, was a Quaker. Now, Quakers are Christians, but they have some different views and different opinions of how Christians should live. First off, they believed that life should be lived simply, not extravagantly, like some people did in England. They also believed that all men should be treated equally, no matter their position in life, no matter even their faith within Christianity. They also, as well with their beliefs, refused to bow to any earthly king because God and Jesus was their king. They also refused to pay any taxes to the Church of England, also known as the Anglican Church. Finally, they refused to fight any wars. They were what we call pacifists. They did not believe in killing. So you can imagine that the King of England, King Charles II, did not look at the Quakers, particularly William Penn, with any fondness. So he was very happy and excited when William Penn asked for a charter to go to Pennsylvania. Penn was given a huge tract of land. He wanted a place where people could worship freely, whether they were Quakers or anyone else. They also, when they got to the 13 colonies, were very kind to the Native Americans. Looking at now their government. The government in Pennsylvania was founded around something that William Penn wrote, and it was titled The Great Law of 1862. And if you were to read through the Great Law of 1862, you would see that William Penn believed that religion and government were intertwined, that they needed to be together. Because of this, a lot of the laws and rules within the colony were based around the Christian faith, such as not taking the Lord's name in vain, or making sure that people didn't work on Sunday. William Penn believed that it was best to preserve true Christian and civil liberty through laws such as these. Also, with the Great Law of 1862, an elected assembly was set up. Also, all people were allowed to participate in the lawmaking. And because of this, the legislature or the assembly in Pennsylvania was one of the most powerful in the 13 colonies. We're now moving to the colony of Maryland, the first southern colony that we're going to be talking about. The colony of Maryland had cold, rainy winters. So we're starting to move away from these harsh, snowy winters. Now we're into rain, not cold, not snow, I should say. Their summers were hot and humid. So again, we're continuing the pattern of we're getting south, more south, and our summers are getting a lot warmer and hotter. The geography was made up of low, fertile land that surrounded Chesapeake Bay. And if you look at this map right here, you can see Chesapeake Bay goes right up and really makes Maryland into a much smaller colony. Here's another great view of the Chesapeake Bay. You can also see all these rivers here that flow into the Potomac. The Potomac is a pretty big river. It's also a river that goes by our present-day capital of Washington, D.C. And if I can make this picture bigger, we can read a little bit more of their geography once I move these pictures. So please pause the video right now, and I'd like you to read through this. Let's look at the economics of Maryland. Like a lot of the other colonies that we've studied so far, they had farming, crops, beef, dairy. Now, because we're in the southern colonies, the crops they grew were a lot of crops made to sell, so called cash crops. There was ranching, lumber, shipbuilding, fishing, and iron mining. And this picture here is supposed to show indentured servants. Indentured servants, as this says right here, were men or women who had their tickets bought for them to come to the New World. And in exchange for having someone to bring them over, they worked with these people for 5 to 7 years. The colony of Maryland had a lot of indentured servants coming over with more wealthier landowners. The religion was various, and this various religion was made up of Catholics and Protestants. All right, let's talk about some reasons why people left England to come to the colony of Maryland. Before we do that, real quick, we need to talk about some background. Now, as I mentioned before in this video, England's official religion was called the Anglican Church. The Anglican Church did not treat anyone associated with the Catholic Church kindly. The Catholic Church was not in England, and that's for a different video, but you can Google that. It's very interesting why they split away from the Catholic Church. Anyways, A wealthy landowner by the name of George Calvert, who was also Lord of Baltimore and was Catholic, wanted a colony where anyone, regardless of their faith, could make a good and prosperous life. Now, unfortunately, George died before this charter could be seen through. However, his son, Cecil, was able to finish this and got a charter to start the colony of Maryland. Now, Cecil sent his brother Leonard over as governor. Cecil felt that people might try to take his charter away, and he didn't want that. So he fought hard in England to keep the charter, while Leonard went over to start this colony. All right, let's talk about the government here of Maryland. As I mentioned, Cecil Calvert sent his brother Leonard Calvert over to be governor of the colony of Maryland. Cecil told his brother to preserve unity and peace between the Protestants and the Catholics, because he knew, because there weren't a lot of Catholics in England, that they needed the Protestants to help make money to make sure the colony continued to function. So that's what Cecil did. In fact, in a letter written from Cecil to Leonard, he told Leonard that he should have other Catholic men and women families to kind of keep their opinions private so they didn't stir up trouble with the Protestant people who were there. Now, eventually, Governor Leonard, if we can call him that, gave up his power so that the citizens of the colony could elect an assembly to help rule. Now, unfortunately, there was always a power struggle between the Protestants and the Catholics, no matter how hard this gentleman here, Leonard, fought to make sure they were on the same side. So, one of the last things he tried to do was to create an act concerning religion, which really protected the Catholics and other religious groups who were in the minority from anything that could harm or hurt them. Well, thank you guys for sticking with this. This was a longer video than I've normally done. I appreciate it. There was a lot to cover. Please go to Edmodo to answer the questions that are going to be there. There are 3 questions. Remember, you can always come back to the video and rewatch parts of it. See you in class.